On Monday, I released a video talking about the new update to drones, and this was originally filmed last week, Thursday or Friday, I don't remember exactly which. Now, NetEase over the weekend did release some information that they were going to be unrolling that change a little bit, and a lot of people disagreed with me on that video, which is fine. I left the video up because I believe that the heart and the central premise were still there, but apparently I didn't really explain myself all that well. I've gone back and watched it myself, and I recognise that I didn't make some of the points as clearly and as thoroughly as perhaps I should have done. So in today's video, we're going to look at the update rolling out today, Wednesday, the 23rd of November 2022, talking about how these drone changes are actually being pulled back a bit. Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie, and if you do enjoy this content, please let me know. Drop a comment down below letting me know your thoughts and opinions, hit like while you're down there, subscribe if you haven't already, and of course, if you do want to go the extra mile to help support me making content like this, you can head across to Patreon and indeed my Redbubble merchandise store, and we'll talk a little bit about finances toward the end of the video. If you're interested in the situation that I announced on Monday, I will give an update to that at the very end of this video, so stick around for that if you're interested in getting an update on what happened this week. Now let's jump right in then, let's have a look at the game announcement. So after the drone velocity update, says NetEase, we've implemented more diversified combinations of extreme and combat calculations based on the feedback from capsuleers and the actual combat performance. As a result, further adjustments have been made for drone velocity and related modules. Adjustments are as followed. Small drones, standard small drones, their base velocity has been increased to between 3 and 3.6 kilometers. Mediums 2.3 to 2.7 and large 1.3 to 1.5. They changed the velocity difference for assault and offense drones to plus and minus 20%. They raised the drone navigation computer activation time to 20 seconds. Activation affected enhancement of fighter micro warp drive guide increased up to 4,000%. Crikey. Signature radius penalty changed to 400%. Flight velocity for drones or fighters raised to 40% for the micro thruster branch of the Bombard tactic implants. Now I'm going to be controversial on this. The only change here I actually like is the drone navigation computer activation time going up to 20 seconds. That should have been a standard a long time ago and should have brought things into perspective. Now, before we talk too much about all of these, I want to go over some of the feedback that I received from that previous video and give a little bit of, well, counter feedback, I suppose. So there were some interesting complaints and examples given to me. The first one that was given to me was that, well, my Prophecy can't catch an Orthrus now, and I kind of feel that's the point. A Prophecy is a battle cruiser. Not only is it a battle cruiser, it's an Amarr battle cruiser, not even a Minmatar one that is a little bit faster. Like, look, I get it, a Hurricane is quite a fast battle cruiser, it's basically standard cruiser speed. The Prophecy, on the other hand, is not. It is very much a battle cruiser, and if your Prophecy, if the drones on it cannot catch an Orthrus that is kiting, I don't see that as a problem. Because an Orthrus that is kiting, an Orthrus is designed to be a kiting ship. It basically flies in a straight line away from you and keeps you coming towards it while it holds you at bay with extended range warp disruptors that turn off your micro warp drive. Now, this is the point of the Orthrus. It is a ship that basically fights you while it's running away. That is what kiting is. So if your drone ship can't handle a kiting ship, well, I don't see that as a problem. Drones should not be the absolute answer to everything. I saw a lot of complaints as well from people saying things like, well, my Machariel no longer has a way to deal with, pilots who are intercepting at range, or my Dragoon, even the Dragoon Sniper and that with their additional range, still can't properly catch a interceptor that is orbiting me at 60 to 70 kilometers and tying me down. Now, my first problem with this is that if an interceptor is at 60 to 70 kilometers away and tying you down with warp disruptors, I get that. That's what an interceptor is supposed to do, right? We agree that an interceptor is a tackle frigate, therefore it is supposed to tie you down effectively. That is its role. At 60 to 70 kilometers away, it's also not applying any DPS. In fact, none of the interceptors are applying DPS from a range of basically 20 kilometers upwards, because at that point, the small weapons just are not in range anymore. And even if they are in range, it's so far into fall off that it's basically nothing at that point. Now, my problem with that argument is that, with the argument of, well, I can't counter that now, is that they haven't countered you either. If you're looking at this as you being solo and them being solo, then ultimately they're doing nothing to you. Ultimately, they're just holding you in position, right? The problem is when their friends arrive in a fleet, at which point your argument is now that when someone attacks me with a fleet, I can't handle it solo. And that's not the point, right? This is EVE. This is an MMO, massively multiplayer online game. You are supposed to have friends. If someone is PvPing you, it means you're in a situation where PvP is inevitable. You should have friends of your own around you. If someone comes in and intercepts you and sits at 60 kilometers or 30 kilometers even, and is just, you know, warping around you with a micro warp drive, holding you in disruption range and all that kind of thing, then yeah, I get that that's like a problem to you. It's not a problem as far as game design goes, because your argument of that's unfair is based on the fact that he has a fleet and you don't. You solve that problem by having a fleet of your own, and I did suggest this to some people who then came back with the counter of, oh, so basically you're saying I need to have a fleet to do anything. It's like, yes, you're in nullsec. That's the point. How have you missed that for 2 years of gameplay? If you are ratting in nullsec, you should have friends around you. Like, oh, I need an interceptor to counter an interceptor now. That's basically what they're for. That is the 2 roles of interceptors in fleet mechanics, to fight off other interceptors and to tackle things. And you can sit there and say, oh yeah, but you know, like a drone boat, a drone destroyer is supposed to counter frigates. And yes, it does. A drone destroyer, like a Dragoon or an Algos, will absolutely eat alive any frigate that gets into range. It just needs to have them come into range, and ultimately that's kind of the point I've been getting at here, that a destroyer, put a destroyer in a fleet next to a battleship. If something like a worm happens to warp in and try to take that out, that destroyer will eat it. I've watched people eating worms and crew ores over this week. I've had a couple of kill mounts. I wish I'd saved them. Ultimately, this is kind of the point that I'm getting at here. People are using interceptors. I can't catch interceptors at the moment. Well, 1, that is the point. 2, you're forgetting about all the other frigate types. 3, if you want to catch an interceptor, you need to rig specifically for it. You need to fit specifically for it. And if you want to fit, say, an arbitrator with a drone tracking computer, omnidirectional tracking link, then yeah, that's going to help you. That is going to help you actually catch an interceptor. It's kind of the same that if you have a stabber fleet issue and you want it to deal with interceptors, you have to fit it a specific way. And maybe I'm being unkind in the way I say this, but I can't think of a more friendly way of putting it. Please don't take offense at this. It's just, I can't think of a better phrase right now. I think people are used to drones just kind of being the easy mode. Lock on, let your drones go after a target and hunt it down. Because most drone pilots I spoke to who are what I would refer to as advanced drone pilots, people who use the manual orbiting range, who fit specific to a situation, who are specialists in drone ships, I'm talking the likes of Rahman and Bradrick, have not had the same problems that everyone else apparently is having. And this just comes down to the fact that ultimately what we're looking at here is the equivalent of if autocannons suddenly got nerfed back to the situation they are currently in. Like if autocannons had previously had massive range and even better tracking, like if they'd had basically like rifled railgun range but snub-nosed railgun tracking, and now they brought back to actual autocannons. It's like you can still do everything you want to do with the drones, just not as easily. You can't do all of it at one go. And that is very much the point. That is so much the point of all of this, that drones for so long have been pretty much easy mode, in inverted commas. Like, yeah, you're not going to always get kills with drones if you're just playing it easy mode, but it's not overly hard. You know, an arbitrator, you just kind of lock on and then send your drones, and they would catch anything. They would catch anything. You could drop your drones down to small drones, and they would catch interceptors. They would fly up to them and actually get them, and that's a problem. Look, interceptors are overpowered, I believe some people would say at this point. I'm not so sure they are anymore. I think interceptors still could do with another DPS nerf, because yet they don't really need that. I argued that drones should get a bonus to ships, as in things like the Prophecy, the Dragoon that already have a drone flight velocity bonus should have an increase to that. Maybe something like the Vexor and the Myrmidon and the Dominix and other drone ships that don't have a drone flight velocity should get one. That would balance out drones. It would mean that the drones on dedicated ships are better. But what we now have here, looking at these notes, yeah, I told you, we would get back to it eventually, is that basically standard small drones at 3.6 kilometers per second, by the time you are at drone 555, which a lot of drone pilots are because Expert 5 does actually make sense on that one, then you don't need to worry about your fitting anymore. Like, you genuinely don't. Your drones are just going to catch interceptors. Again, we're back at that point now. And this really, to me, smacks of the entire April balance update happening again. Back in April, I know most of you are sick and tired of me talking about this. Back in April, they nerfed all of the command skills to, rather than giving a 50% increase to flight velocity, it would only give a 20% increase to flight velocity, thus slowing every ship in the game down. This was a massive change for missiles. This would have been the tracking change they needed for drones as well, which would have meant they didn't need to do all the buffs to tracking on drones that they've just done, right? But people complained about it. People who weren't even testing it complained very loudly about it, and NetEase basically went from 50% nerf down to 20%, back up to 40% speed. And the simple point was the 20% speed meant that actually anything that was supposed to be able to speed tank still did speed tank. And going from a 50% speed boost to a 40% speed boost, that drop was not a significant nerf, and it didn't help missiles. It didn't fix any of the problems that the original patch had sought to do. And this is the situation again. Even if you believe that the nerf was too much, the rollback is equally too much. They've gone the other way. This is meaningless. This doesn't actually change the situation from the previous numbers. Like, they're slightly lower, yes, but not by much. Really not by much, and this now means that something like a Dominix can just swap down to small drones and tackle interceptors. You've got a situation where a battleship, something like a Raven Striker, can actually use its drones to do stuff like this again, and this is kind of... it's a difficulty, because I can sit there and say that, you know, interceptors are overpowered, but other frigates simply aren't. The reason that no one flies really other frigates, other than a couple of the faction frigates, is because there just aren't options. There just aren't options. Why would you fly a Merlin Assault or a Breacher Assault when you could fly something like a Daredevil or a, you know, or a Gamma? You wouldn't. You simply wouldn't. And these changes just make that even more vital, because now every single ship that can fit drones, which is every cruiser and above, has a way to deal damage to those frigates now. And it just... I really don't like these. I really don't like these changes. You had a situation here where the carriers, which is something I've not really talked about in these videos, the carriers were actually struggling to hit the fastest frigates, and surely that's a good thing, right? Having an actual counter to a capital is a good thing that isn't just other capitals. But no, the complaints on this from capital pilots were, and I'm not even kidding, I did not see a single capital pilot say anything other than, effectively, oh, my carrier can't 100% counter every single subcap anymore, this is awful. And so NetEase have reversed that, because NetEase want you in capitals, because capitals are their big money makers right now. They're basing the entire game around pushing people into capital ships, and this rollback shows it even more. You are looking at a massive situation where carriers have gone back to being godly against every single subcapital. So why fly a subcapital when you can just have a carrier that does everything, right? Your carrier can already do PvP. Like, if someone, you can do PvE really, really well, and if someone jumps you, you are equipped to handle that. How is that right? How is that balance? It's not. It's simply not. It's pandering to capital pilots at this point. Let's be completely honest. Every single drone pilot that I know actually flies these creatively and does it properly didn't have a problem with this. I did mistakenly say to some people, and I should address this, that there are drone flight velocity rigs. There aren't. I thought there were. I thought they'd recently added those. It was the drone tracking rigs. And again, this would be a better way of doing it, in my opinion. Flat up buff to all drones just massively flips the situation back to the point where drones do literally everything again, which means they are still a good choice for PvP when we're trying to cut down on them in PvP, in large-scale PvP. Having them in small-scale PvP is fine, and they were working in that. I saw people hunting with Dragoons and Algos and doing well with those. I saw arbitrators getting kills and things still with their drones. The big complaints of, oh, my Thorax's medium drone isn't hitting anything anymore. Oh no! How terrible for you that your railgun cruiser, the little piddly Mark 9 whatever that you've put on it, isn't hitting anymore? It's almost like you're supposed to use that as a defensive situation on a target that you've webbed nice and close, at which point it hit fine. Just, This community can be the best thing ever sometimes. It can also be the absolute worst, and it is a self-defeating community. People cry out for changes that ultimately break the game, then complain that the game is broken. Then when the devs try to fix the broken state, they complain about the changes. Like, what do you guys want? Do you want a broken game, or do you want something balanced? Do you want something balanced and fun where your decisions actually mean something, which was the entire point of Eve? If you haven't watched the Butterfly Effect trailer, go watch it. It's incredible. That's what Eve's about. It's about your decisions having meaning. In Echoes, they simply don't anymore, and every time someone tries to change it so that things make a difference, the actual choices are included in the game, the community just gets really, really outraged, and the devs just kind of put their hands up and step back on it. Every meaningful change that gets done to everything just gets pulled back because the community can't handle the fact that they can't autoplay the game anymore. They can't just lock on and hit attack, and that's just it. That's the brain input that they need. And yeah, I know I'm going to upset some people by saying that, but if that's your concept of playing the game, then please GTFO and stop ruining it for anyone who actually wants this to be a game. If you want to play an AFK idler, go download one. There are freaking millions on the Google Play Store and the iOS Store. You are not short of games that are AFK idle games that you can just kind of tap on absent-mindedly while shoving crayons up your nose. For those of us who actually want a game that requires us to engage with it and play with it, it just feels like we're being stymied at every opportunity. These were good changes. I do accept that a slight rollback may have been necessary. I think the better rollback would have been to give drone ships buffs to speed, and I think adding a drone flight velocity rig would have been an excellent way of doing it as well, by allowing someone to basically set up a ship specifically to deal with smaller, faster targets, just like every other freaking ship in Eve Echoes has to do. But no, I'm the one who's in the wrong here. NetEase were in the wrong. The people who understand the game and are trying to get it balanced are absolutely in the wrong. The people who want it to be an AFK snooze fest, congratulations, you got it. Anyway, folks, that's pretty much the update here. I don't know what else to say. You know, we could talk about the optimizations and the bug fixes, but I just don't care. None of these are really important. The only one on there that is worth mentioning, sorry, I've just tapped off it with my fat fingers. The only one that's worth mentioning is there that drone blueprints are now tradable, that this was a problem. It wasn't supposed to be the case. Fix the issue where drone blueprints could not be traded. This is great. That is a fantastic update. It is an excellent thing for industry that now they can buy, you know, people who want to do faction war games can buy those blueprints, put them on the market, sell them for industrialists to make. That is how the game should be. That is how most blueprints should be, how most things in the game should be. Rather than it dropping off NPCs, we should have blueprints that industrialists create. That adds jobs for industry. It helps reduce some of the infinite ore supply that we have. There's just, it's the thing that we should be doing in all of this. It's the thing we should be doing in all of this. That's the basic, only real good thing under there, and I do like the fact, as I said, that the drone navigational computer or the omnidirectional tracking link has now been up to 220 seconds. That's how that should have been long ago. Ultimately, this was a decent change that was perhaps a little heavy-handed, but instead of tweaking it into something, you know, clever, no, they've just kind of rammed a reverse through on this. They've slammed the car into reverse and just taken out half the bollards en route. Basically, final point here, yeah, I really, really think that this should not have just been a reversal. It should have been adding drone flight velocity rigs and giving dedicated drone ships minor buffs to drone flight velocity, or increasing the buff that they already have if they have one. That would have been my way of doing it, and it would have been a creative way that still solved the problems whilst giving drone pilots what they want. But there we go. Anyway, folks, leave your opinions on this in the comment section down below. That is the drone section of this video done, but if you do want to hear about what the update from earlier this week, I'll jump into that right now. Now, some of you who follow me on YouTube a bit more closely may have noticed I put out an update on Monday saying that we'd had a massive fine from the Zimbabwean electrical transmission and distribution company, ZETDC. Long story short, we had issues with our meter. They tried to fix the meter. That didn't work. So the guy who came, supposedly my brother-in-law was the one here, just bridged it. So we didn't actually have to pay for electricity until they found a new meter. Because of this, we still bought tokens each month. We were still paying for electricity, and we know that we spent about $14 to $15 a month, so we were spending $15 on tokens, and it was his job to basically buy those tokens for us. Turns out that he's been lying through his teeth for 6 months and basically not been paying that. Well, they came along and said, well, you haven't kept up with your payments. Here's a fine to the tune of about $1,200 US. The initial estimate was about $1,000, but then we had to pay a load of other stuff on top of that. $1,200, or we would face criminal charges on Tuesday. And yeah, some people said, well, hang on, that doesn't sound right, you know, that you're getting a criminal charge without any prior warning. Welcome to Zimbabwe. That is how things work. The law can be incredibly heavy-handed out here because I think the government just kind of believes in the idea of make an example of a few people and then no one else will do it. Doesn't work. But anyway, we paid the fine at literally the rate of having to basically drain my bank account, drain our savings, phone up friends and family and say, look, we really need some help here. A lot of help was given. A lot of you guys did donate to PayPal as well. That has now been paid off. The trouble is that, yes, this means for next month, we are completely out of money. Nothing whatsoever. YouTube comes through later this week for me, my pay, and that should help us over, but we've got some debts that now need to repay, and things are still a little bit tight on food and stuff like that. So for those of you who have donated, thank you. It really means the world to us. I will be trying to get the money back from our asshole brother-in-law, but ultimately I don't know if we can, because what can I do to that? The guy hasn't had a job basically in 2.5 years. And if he's not been willing to get a job to pay the bills in the house he's living in, if he's not been willing to get a job to, you know, actually, you know, be able to provide for his son, who mainly lives with the mother, then, like, what can we do about this? We can't make him get a job just to repay a debt to us, right? And equally, the argument of, we'll just kick him out onto the street doesn't work because of numerous family reasons. But yeah, we're trying. It's a bit of a complex situation, but it has inspired a video for my Zimbabwe channel this week. I'll be talking about ZESA and how all that works out here, how our electricity works and the dire state that can be in. So if you are interested in hearing the full story and learning a bit more about Zimbabwe and its electrical supply, do head across to youtube.com/@Bulawayo Buccaneer. It's also linked on the main page of my YouTube channel as well, so you can head across there and find out more about life in Zimbabwe. But anyway, I thought I'd bolt that onto the end of this video as a thank you to everyone who has been able to provide support, as a middle finger to the people who said, oh, get a real job. Sorry, this job actually pays about as much as most jobs I've had in the past. I work harder at this job than I have at previous jobs in the past as well. And you know what? It's just cost of living out here right now is absolutely insane. And tell me that you could just absorb a $1,200 fine with the click of your fingers. Anyway, that's all for today, folks. Thank you so much for your support. Love to you all. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.